In the eerie expanse of the void, where darkness enveloped everything like a thick blanket, Anthony stirred from a deep sleep that felt eternal. Confusion clouded his mind as he tried to grasp his surroundings, or the lack thereof. The void offered no hints, no clues. It was just an infinite stretch of obscurity. Yet the tranquility of this boundless darkness had been comforting, almost soothing, until it was shattered by an unexpected noise. Anthony's heart skipped a beat. For a fleeting moment, he hoped it might be his father returning after years of absence. But hope quickly turned to bewilderment when a voice broke through the silence. Not the familiar one he longed for, but a crisp, clear system prompt that addressed him by name. "Welcome, Anthony," it said with a politeness that seemed out of place in the vast nothingness. The voice continued, but its tone shifted to something more impersonal, almost robotic. "You have died," it declared matter-of-factly. Anthony's mind raced. Died? That couldn't be right. The last memory he clung to was of him reading in his room, a picture of mundane safety. Now, told of his demise, he half wondered if this was what the afterlife looked like. But where were the heavenly delights he'd heard about? No fluffy clouds or endless buffets in sight. Trying to keep his rising panic at bay, Anthony listened as the voice, deep and gruff, reminiscent of a legendary wizard clad in white, assured him of a new beginning. Not Jesus, but rather, the voice was eerily similar to Gandalf's. As the void's darkness began to fade, revealing a sky painted in hues of cloudy blue, the voice unfolded Anthony's fate. Rebirth in the mystical world of Pangera. Destiny and luck will guide your path, the Gandalf-like figure intoned. Anthony wasn't ready. He wanted to protest, to ask for a moment to collect himself before being thrust into what sounded like a narrative straight out of an epic tale, complete with danger, adventure, and perhaps even magic. But the system, undeterred by Anthony's reluctance, proceeded to detail his new character stats. Level 1, strength at 15, and a surprising cunning of 25 among others. Anthony felt a mix of disbelief and a budding thrill. On paper, he seemed formidable, almost heroic like the protagonist from his favorite game, Tales of Telda. However, his excitement dwindled as more details emerged. His listed skills included digging, acid shot, grip, and bite, not exactly the arsenal of a mighty sorcerer. And then the most peculiar and disheartening revelation of all. He was reborn as a hatchling ant worker. Not a knight, wizard, or rogue, but an insect with a role seemingly insignificant in the grand tapestry of a fantastical world. This realization brought a surge of frustration. Gandalf, you've got some explaining to do. Anthony thought bitterly. How had he gone from a human to an ant? And why are these bizarre abilities like acid shots? It seemed almost comical. Yet here he was, about to start a new life far removed from anything he could have imagined. As Anthony struggled to process his new reality, the emptiness of his past life cast a long shadow over him. His bookface inbox had always been a barren desert, void of messages, a stark testament to his introverted nature. Gandalf's voice, ever gruff, broke through his thoughts, urging him to take control of his destiny, even if that meant treading the path of an ant. Anthony couldn't help but feel a flicker of anger at the wizard's nonchalant decree. Forge his mother too? He muttered under his breath, a mix of frustration and disbelief coloring his tone. The countdown began, each number echoing like a drumbeat in Anthony's head. 3, 2, 1. Silence engulfed him as the soul transfer completed. The next thing he knew, his entire being was compressed, squeezed into a form completely foreign and yet terrifyingly real. He was actually being reborn as an ant. This was no joke, no dream from which he could wake. His new body felt awkward and confined. 6 legs wriggled, testing their freedom. 2 antennae twitched, picking up the faintest vibrations. His mandibles clicked together, a strange yet potent reminder of his new form. From head to abdomen, he noted the 3 segments of his body, recalling how he once observed the ants he kept as pets. Now, he was one of them, a surreal twist of fate that felt more like a bizarre nightmare. The darkness around him was oppressive, more intense than any shadowy night he had ever experienced. He stumbled forward, his vision blurry and unreliable, but ahead, there appeared a glimmer of hope. A faint, blurry light tinted with blue. Using his new antennae to navigate, Anthony detected various scents and air currents, the most notable being a stale, underground odor. It dawned on him that he should be sensing pheromones, the chemical signals that would lead him to his colony. Yet, nothing. Was he destined to be as isolated in this life as he had been in his previous one? Determined to find some sense of belonging, Anthony pressed on toward the light. The scent of staleness gradually mixed with something familiar, something akin to his own new scent. Hope surged within him as he imagined encountering another ant, perhaps the start of his integration into this underground world. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, but Anthony's resolve only strengthened with each step. Finally, the end of the tunnel neared, the blue light growing brighter, pulsating with life. His heart, if he still had one, would have been pounding with anticipation. But the scene that greeted him at the tunnel's exit was far from welcoming. Instead of finding a fellow ant ready to greet him into the fold, he saw a comrade in distress, hurtling through the air as if tossed by an unseen force. On the other side, a monstrous creature loomed, its grin wide and malicious, sharp teeth glinting ominously in the dim light. Underneath a sturdy layer of rugged scales, the muscles of the monstrous reptilian creature bulged, presenting a terrifying sight for someone as diminutive as Anthony the ant. With the apparent demise of his potential comrade, the beast seemed to revel in its victory, smugly crunching the unfortunate ant into pieces before leisurely consuming him. The horror of the scene sent waves of panic through Anthony. All his life, he had been fascinated by ants and lost in books, never imagining he'd witness such a brutal reality. But there was no denying it now. This was his world. A harsh landscape where ants were prey and monstrous predators roamed free. As the other ant, trapped under the creature's foot, turned its pleading eyes towards him, Anthony felt a jolt of urgency. What could a single ant do against such odds? But then, an instinctive thought flashed through his mind. His only option was to run. And so, he did, with all the speed his 6 newly hatched legs could muster, as if his very survival depended on it, which it did. His escape was clumsy and fraught with difficulty. He stumbled and fell, his face hitting the ground hard, but he pushed on. By the time he paused, gasping for breath, he hoped he had put enough distance between himself and the monster. Yet, the fear of encountering another predator lingered. It was clear now. He needed to shed his human expectations and embrace his new identity as an ant. Digging seemed like the obvious choice. But as he scrabbled at the ground with his legs, he made little progress. Then, it hit him. Ants dig with their mandibles. Without a second thought, he plunged his face into the dirt, his mandibles tearing through the earth with surprising efficiency. This was real digging, far more effective than his earlier attempts. Soon, he had burrowed deep enough to carve out a spherical chamber, a makeshift sanctuary where he could rest. Lying on his back, Anthony tried to catch his breath, his mind racing with questions. He was supposed to be born into a colony, surrounded by fellow ants and protected from immediate threats. The grim fate of the other ants suggested something was amiss. Perhaps there had been a raid or some disaster that scattered the ants of his colony. As he lay there, a glimmer of memory surfaced. Gandalf's mention of skill points and biomass. Anthony found himself in a world shrouded in mystery and transformed by what the system called civilization's hefty gains. Yet there was a sense of loss, an enigma of forgotten legacies that no one seemed to recall. As he pondered over this, his attention snapped back to his immediate situation. With only 1 skill point and 1 unit of biomass at his disposal, each decision could drastically shape his survival. Initially, Anthony tried the most straightforward approach to access any potential menu. He raised his legs and shouted, "Level up," into the darkness. Unfortunately, it did nothing but make him feel rather silly. Shaking off the embarrassment, a new idea struck him. This time, he swiped the air in front of him and yelled, "Status open." To his astonishment and relief, it worked. A text prompt materialized before his eyes. As he browsed through his stats and skills, he couldn't help but marvel at his newfound ability to see them so clearly. His focus turned to the grip ability. The description read, "Grip allows the user to hold onto surfaces and objects firmly, enabling actions like climbing walls." Anthony's eyes lit up with excitement. This sounded like something out of a superhero comic. Grateful for this merciful and triumphant return of Lord Gandalf the System, Anthony silently thanked the mysterious, system-like Gandalf. Though just a text box, Anthony imagined Gandalf would possess the most majestic beard and eyebrows imaginable. For now, at least, Gandalf's guidance was invaluable. Anthony carefully considered his options. There was Acid Shot, a skill that could potentially offer him a long-range attack method, allowing him to engage enemies from a distance, an appealing choice considering the dangerous predators like the Croca beast he had already encountered. He weighed the benefits of enhancing his digging skills against the strategic advantage of a ranged attack. In this strange, subterranean world, knowledge was his most significant deficit. Without understanding the full scope of the ecosystem here, including the variety of creatures that lurked in the shadows, every choice carried weight. Mulling over his lack of vocal cords and his solitary reliance on self-gathered information, Anthony realized the gravity of venturing into the unknown alone. The mere thought of the dangers lurking on the surface, or even within the tunnels, was enough to send shivers down his spine. Taking deep, steadying breaths, Anthony gave himself a mental pep talk. Panic would serve no purpose, calm and strategic thinking was essential for survival. With his current abilities laid out before him, and the pressing need to make an informed choice on how to spend his precious skill point, he braced himself. Anthony pondered the weight of his decision on how best to utilize his scarce resources. Just as he mulled over his options, a prompt from Gandalf guided him, reinforcing his confidence in the wise, though disembodied, system voice. Grateful, he mentally sent his best wishes to Gandalf, hoping the Guardian's mythical beard remained as magnificent and fluffy as ever. Facing a plethora of choices wasn't easy. Speed was essential. It could mean the difference between escape and entrapment. Then there was tunnel sense, which promised better navigation through the twisting underground mazes. His offensive skills, bite and acid, stood out as crucial for defense and attack in dire situations. But with his survival at stake, Anthony also considered the enhancements offered for his physical traits: exoskeleton, mandibles, legs, eyes, antennae, and acid gland. Aware of his vulnerability in this new and dangerous world, he made a calculated choice. To bolster his chances of survival, he opted to enhance his eyesight with one biomass point and invested his skill point in stealth, aiming to improve his ability to move unseen and unheard by potential threats. As soon as he confirmed his choices, a searing pain shot through his eyes, as if flames were licking his corneas. The intensity of the pain was unexpected, almost as if Gandalf had betrayed him. Writhing on the ground, Anthony did his best to manage the agony. Thankfully, the pain subsided quicker than he anticipated, leaving him relieved that the transformation process was not as prolonged as it might have been in his former human form. With his vision now significantly clearer and his ability to remain hidden enhanced, Anthony felt a surge of newfound confidence. It was time to venture out from the safety of his tunnel. He paused at a junction, deciding his path. The right led towards the area where the beast had devoured his fellow ant, a reminder of potential danger. Thus, he turned left, eager to face whatever challenges lay ahead with his enhanced abilities. No longer the panicked newcomer, Anthony assumed the role of a confident explorer, crawling swiftly through the tunnels. His laughter echoed in his mind, a sign of his rising spirits as he navigated without incident. The logic of his decisions, focusing on stealth and improving his grip, seemed sound, now more than ever. As he moved, he noticed the peculiar blue veins twisting through the rocks, a detail his newfound eyesight allowed him to appreciate. The visual enhancements also gave him a clearer view of his own body. He noted the gradual hardening of his initially soft and white exoskeleton, a natural progression for a newborn ant. The journey continued until he reached the end of the tunnel, where he was greeted by an overwhelming blight. The source was the luminescent blue veins and a pool of water, casting brilliant reflections throughout the cavern. The cavern that Anthony had stumbled upon was vast and echoed with the soft lapping of water from the reservoir. But it was not just the expanse of the pool that held his attention. It was the monstrous inhabitants that loomed around it. Focused initially on the mesmerizing reflections in the water, Anthony nearly missed the presence of the fearsome creatures skulking near the edges. Recognizing his vulnerability in this pecking order, he understood that stealth was not just a survival tactic but a necessity for gathering information without becoming prey. Anthony had always taken human vision for granted, and adapting to the limited sight of an ant was proving disorienting. In the dim light of the cavern, stationary objects became nearly invisible to him. He pondered the nature of ants, inherently weak alone but formidable in numbers. Isolated, without the support of a colony, he felt every bit of his sensory shortcomings acutely. He was determined, though, to enhance his vision. Fantasizing about the ability to detect the slightest movements through solid barriers, no matter how improbable that might seem. As time passed, Anthony's exoskeleton matured into a robust shade of red, signaling his development and adaptation to his new form. Investigating the source of the continuous, unsettling noises around the reservoir, he climbed the cliff walls with a mix of agility and determination. Reaching a vantage point, he tried to locate the origins of the sounds, but the iridescent blue veins crisscrossing the rock surfaces distracted and obscured his vision. Droplets of water trickled from the cavern ceiling, revealing the source of the reservoir below, yet the eerie noises persisted. Anthony realized then what should have been obvious from the start. The various beasts were responsible for the sounds. From his high perch, he watched a wolf-like beast, its growls reverberating through the cavern. When the creature's eyes started to drift in his direction, Anthony ducked behind a rock outcrop, his heart pounding with the close call. It was the perfect moment to test his newly acquired stealth skill. Activating it, he watched in awe as his exoskeleton turned transparent, a perfect camouflage against the rocky backdrop. Now effectively hidden, he felt a rush of confidence and safety. From his concealed position, he took the opportunity to study the menacing wildlife. His gaze fell on the crocobeast, the very creature that had devastated his would-be ant comrades. The realization hit him hard. The predators, despite their terrifying capabilities, weren't attacking each other. They seemed to coexist in a bizarre, uneasy peace, as if bound by an unspoken truce possibly forged in a momentous gathering he had not witnessed. The implications were intriguing yet unnerving. Anthony knew he couldn't afford to simply stay hidden and observe. He needed to move, to explore, and to understand the dynamics of this strange ecosystem if he was to navigate the dangers and perhaps uncover why these mighty predators refrained from turning on one another. As Anthony contemplated getting closer to the creatures around the pool, he knew he needed to proceed with caution. The descent from the ceiling was painstakingly slow due to his diminutive size. If ants could sweat, Anthony mused, he'd have surely drenched the cavern floor by now with his efforts. Nevertheless, this cautious approach had its rewards. His continuous use of the stealth skill had improved it to level 2, a testament to the adage that practice makes perfect. With his stealth skill enhanced, Anthony realized he could efficiently gather information while simultaneously honing his abilities. This dual benefit bolstered his confidence, but he quickly reined in his enthusiasm. Overconfidence in such a perilous environment could be fatal. With a steadying breath, he focused on the task at hand, inching closer to get a better look at the cluster of beasts by the water. The sight that greeted him was not for the faint-hearted. Entangled in a grotesque clump were creatures with piercing red eyes and hundreds of legs, centipedes. The revulsion hit him hard, and Anthony felt a visceral reaction to the nightmarish scene. He cursed the dungeon-like depths of this cavern for its array of horrors. For a moment, he longed for something as simple as medicine to quell his nausea. Next, his attention turned to a lizard-like monster, which seemed almost tame in comparison to the centipedes, though its body bristled with sharp spikes. Observing these creatures, Anthony began to see them not just as threats, but as potential sources of biomass, which he could harvest to strengthen himself. However, he understood that turning this possibility into reality would require careful planning and execution. For the next few hours, Anthony dedicated himself to surveillance. He hovered above the pool, subtly shifting positions to remain unseen. His observations were meticulous. The movements and behaviors of the creatures provided valuable insights. The centipedes and the crocobeast left the pool area first, heading in the same direction. An hour later, the wolf-lizard beasts departed through a small tunnel at the south end. Finally, the spiky lizard made its exit by crawling up a wall and vanishing into a crevice. Another creature adept at navigating vertical surfaces, much like Anthony. This prolonged period of espionage not only deepened his understanding of the cavern's dynamics, but also elevated his stealth ability to level 3. The upgrade was timely. His limbs ached from the continuous strain of maintaining a low profile. As he prepared to retreat to the safety of his tunnel, Anthony felt a mix of relief and accomplishment. Home was just a dig away, and he was armed with new knowledge and improved skills. In this underground world, patience and perseverance were indeed rewarded, and Anthony was learning to navigate its complexities with increasing adeptness. Anthony knew well enough that relaxation was a luxury he couldn't afford. The pressing need for more space in his base camp led him to engage in a frenzied bout of digging. His mandibles tore through the earth with vigor as he instinctively organized the excavated soil. The notification that chimed in to celebrate his achievement of digging level 2 was like a pat on the back, acknowledging his efforts in establishing a secure nest. As he paused, allowing himself a brief moment to rest, Anthony was hit by a wave of hunger so familiar it almost felt nostalgic. Reminiscent of the days when his family ceased financial support, leaving him to fend for himself without a stocked fridge, Anthony's stomach growled in protest. He steeled himself with the reminder that he'd just have to endure. Tomorrow, he would hunt. His target was already chosen, the spiky creature that haunted his plans. Dawn broke, and Anthony found himself clinging to the cavern's ceiling, overlooking the terrain of monsters below. Hunger made his body tremble, weakening his grip on the cold, hard rock. Visions of chocolates, bread, cakes, and steaks danced through his head, taunting him with memories of a life now far behind. His starvation was so intense that it began to warp his perception, turning the formidable crocobeast into a tantalizing piece of meat. Even the repulsive centipedes morphed into a tempting plate of noodles in his delirious state. Anthony knew he had to address his hunger, or risk making a fatal mistake in his weakened state. Over the past 2 days, Anthony had dedicated every waking moment to meticulous preparation. He had observed every inch of the cavern's end, foregone sleep, and endured an agonizing hunger. The endless hours spent hanging upside down above the water had nearly resulted in several near-disastrous slips. His dedication had its rewards, however, as his stealth ability had advanced to level 4, and his digging prowess had reached level 3, thanks to his efforts to expand his hideout. Anthony was a planner and a survivor. He understood that meticulous preparation was how the underdog could turn the tables on the powerful. Yet, as he poised himself for the hunt, he couldn't ignore the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. Hunger was an insidious adversary, one that clouded his mind and sapped his strength. As he focused on the impending confrontation, his antennae picked up the distinct stench of his prey. The shimmer of light reflecting off reptilian eyes in a nearby groove signaled that his moment had nearly arrived. With every sense heightened and his body primed for action, Anthony readied himself for what could be his most critical test yet. As Anthony tracked the movements of the spiky lizard, he noted the creature's routine with precision. A daily descent from its perch on the wall to sip from the pool. This predictability marked it as vulnerable. Anthony was confident this creature was one he could take down. Today, like clockwork, the lizard emerged from its niche in the wall, heading towards the water. It was the moment Anthony had been preparing for, the test of all his meticulous planning. With stealth mode activated, he moved silently along the wall, closing in on his prey. He reassured his grumbling stomach, promising that soon they would feast. All he needed was to position himself perfectly for the strike. As he drew closer, the formidable spikes of the lizard loomed into view, a stark reminder of the danger they posed. Yet, fear was not an option for Anthony. His hunger sharpened his focus, overriding his instincts to flee. He knew that timing and precision were crucial. When the moment was right, Anthony wasted no time. From his strategic vantage point above the lizard, he unleashed his acid shot, targeting one of the creature's legs. The acid sizzled as it made contact, melting flesh and bone alike. The lizard's agony was immediate, its pain-filled squeals echoing off the cavern walls. Phase 1 of Anthony's plan was a resounding success, With the lizard distracted and wounded, Anthony emerged from stealth mode. He taunted the struggling creature, questioning its willingness to fight in such a precarious position. Confidence surged through him. His grip strength and agility were superior, honed from his time spying and evading capture. The lizard, bulky and now impaired by its injured foot, struggled to maneuver on the vertical surface. Blinded by pain and rage, the lizard lashed out with its powerful tail, attempting to dislodge Anthony. The force of the impact damaged the cavern wall, sending debris scattering. Anthony narrowly escaped, leaping to safety. His plan was unfolding perfectly. He was in control, toying with his prey. Next, he aimed another corrosive acid shot, this time directly at the lizard's face. The impact was devastating, further incapacitating the beast as it writhed in torment. Anthony moved swiftly, repositioning to maintain the upper hand, his movements echoing around the now tumultuous pool. The lizard's roars of pain served as a grim soundtrack to the unfolding drama. Anthony knew he needed to conclude this fight swiftly. The noise could attract other predators, potentially complicating his hunt. Observing the lizard's diminishing energy, he sensed the end was near. The creature was slowing, its reactions dulled by pain and injury. Just when Anthony thought victory was within reach, the lizard summoned its remaining strength for one final strike. The tail came crashing towards him unexpectedly, a last desperate attempt to fend off its assailant. Anthony, caught off guard, barely managed to dodge, the move a split-second reaction driven by pure adrenaline. Now, with the lizard spent from its failed attack, Anthony saw his opportunity to end the battle. This was the moment he had been working towards, his chance to claim victory and satiate his overwhelming hunger. From his perch atop the cavern ceiling, Anthony launched himself downward, mandibles poised to clamp down on his prey. With a resounding crunch, he latched onto the lizard's rough skin, initiating what he knew would be the final, decisive phase of the hunt. It was a simple yet brutal strategy. Maintain his grip and bring both himself and the beast crashing down from the wall, using the lizard's own body to absorb the impact of the fall. As they tumbled to the ground, Anthony kept his mandibles fiercely embedded in the lizard's flesh. When they finally hit the rocky floor, he felt the creature's resistance weaken. Softly, he whispered an apology, a grim acknowledgement of the harsh laws that governed this savage new world. Here, survival was paramount, and food was food. Without hesitation, Anthony began administering acid shots across the lizard's body, the corrosive liquid making quick work of the tough exterior. His acid shot skill advanced to level 2 amidst this gruesome task, marking a rapid improvement driven by necessity. As he inspected his prey, he realized with a pang of regret that the lizard was not yet dead. The next steps would be even harsher for both predator and prey. Determined and merciless, Anthony continued to consume the dying lizard, the sounds of crunching and tearing flesh echoing through the cavern. It was a macabre scene, lasting a full 10 minutes until the lizard was completely subdued. Feeding on the lizard not only restored his energy but also imbued him with a sense of primal accomplishment. He felt like a knight returning victorious from battle, having conquered his foe in a direct and visceral manner. Reflecting on his actions, Anthony recognized a stark contrast between his past life and his current existence. Previously, he had drifted through life, often feeling numb and disengaged. Now, he had pushed himself to his limits, actively engaging in the raw and brutal reality of survival. The experience of defeating the lizard, identified by Gandalf as a Spinetta Lycertos, not only granted him a new level and skill point, but also a deeper understanding of his new world. The name Spinetta Lycertos suggested a taxonomy similar to that used on Earth, recalling his days as an ant-keeper. If the creatures here were named with a Latin system, his background in reading and knowledge might prove more useful than he'd anticipated. This encounter had taught him crucial lessons. The mechanics of leveling up, the benefits of earning new skills, and the necessity of consuming the flesh of fallen creatures to grow stronger. Even as he digested the unappetizing meat of the lizard, Anthony acknowledged the pragmatic reality of his actions. Eating was not about pleasure, it was about power. Consuming the flesh of both the strong and the weak was the path to becoming a formidable predator himself. While the taste of lizard meat was far from appealing, the The strength it conferred was undeniable. The taste of the lizard meat was so appalling that Anthony nearly retched again. Despite the unpleasant flavor, the meal had been nutritionally valuable, granting him a crucial point of biomass. Gandalf's incessant notifications had become a backdrop to the day's events, a constant reminder of his progress and survival. With his belly now uncomfortably full, Anthony's grumbles of hunger were replaced by satisfied burps, indicating he wouldn't need to worry about food for at least a week. Feeling the weight of his recent meal, Anthony decided it was time to withdraw to the safety of his nest to plan his next moves. As he climbed to a higher vantage point within the cavern, he observed the other beasts below, their attention fixated on the pool's water, blissfully unaware of their fellow creatures' demise. Their ignorance gave Anthony a sense of strategic superiority as he made his way back to his humble abode. Upon reaching his nest, Anthony rubbed his hands together, a gesture reminiscent of an evil mastermind plotting his next scheme. It was time to review the gains from his recent hunt. While his basic stats remained largely unchanged, his skills had seen significant improvement, a testament to his growing prowess and adaptability in this harsh new world. He reveled in the thrill of his lone journey, a narrative of growth and survival against seemingly insurmountable odds. After indulging in a brief moment of daydreaming about his adventures, Anthony snapped back to reality. Recognizing the need to focus on practical matters, he faced a critical decision: how to allocate his limited biomass points. His eyes, still not up to par with human standards, drew his attention once more. He yearned for enhanced vision to navigate the dimly lit caverns more effectively. When Gandalf prompted him to confirm the expenditure of 2 biomass points to upgrade his eyesight, Anthony didn't hesitate. The process was excruciating, the familiar burning sensation flaring as his eyes underwent transformation. Tears streamed down his face from the intense pain, but he endured, knowing the payoff would be worth it. Once the pain subsided, Anthony assessed his improved vision. Though still inferior to human eyesight, it was a marked improvement that would serve him well in the dark underground. Now, he turned his attention to allocating his remaining skill point. The choice was straightforward. Given the unknowns of his environment and the complex layout of the caverns, Anthony opted for the skill Tunnel Sense. This new ability promised to enhance his spatial awareness, enabling him to navigate the treacherous terrain with greater confidence and safety. It would allow him to venture beyond his comfort zone while ensuring he could return to his nest, a beacon of relative security in this unpredictable world. Confirming his decision with Gandalf, Anthony felt a rush of excitement. The sensation of acquiring a new skill was refreshingly pleasant, akin to the feeling of cool water cascading through his hair. A stark contrast to the painful bodily modifications. With Tunnel Sense now integrated into his repertoire, Anthony felt better equipped to explore and survive the challenges that lay ahead in this mysterious and perilous new realm. After being informed by Gandalf that his Tunnel Sense skill had been successfully learned, Anthony felt a surge of anticipation about its potential benefits for his upcoming explorations. To prepare, he gathered some fallen leaves from around the cavern to fashion a modest but comfortable bed. Feeling deserving of a good rest before embarking on another challenging adventure, Anthony settled into his leafy bed for a well-earned nap. As he drifted off to sleep, somewhere in the distance, the sound of human footsteps approached. A man and a woman, carrying a single light source, moved cautiously through a dense forest. The woman, sensing something amiss, questioned if her companion had noticed anything unusual. He reassured her it was probably just his mind playing tricks, confidently adding that any monster daring to confront them would regret it. Meanwhile, Anthony, blissfully unaware of the human presence, enjoyed a sleep so deep and peaceful that he felt as if he were floating on cloud 9. It was a comfort so profound that he wished he could remain in that dreamlike state forever. However, reality rudely awakened him as he rolled out of his makeshift bed and crashed face first onto the cavern floor. The jarring interruption shattered his idyllic dream, reminding him of the harsh world he inhabited. Disappointed but clear-headed, Anthony knew it was time to shift his focus back to exploration and preparing for his next hunt. With a mischievous snicker, Anthony contemplated another task before diving into the serious business of hunting. Inspired by tales and whimsy, he attempted various magical and fantastical commands like Unlock and Access Profile, inside his mind, hoping to activate some hidden features or information Gandalf might have hinted at. Frustrated by his initial failures, he finally resorted to shouting the Latin name of his last prey, Spinetta laceratis, while dramatically landing on the floor in what he imagined was a superhero pose. To his surprise and relief, it worked. Gandalf's system responded, revealing the basic profile of the Spinetola cerdos, which Anthony translated to mean thorn lizard, due to its venomous spines. Although the information was scant and somewhat disappointing after all his efforts, it was a start. Anthony realized that the system likely required gradual engagement and more encounters with similar creatures to unlock detailed data. Resolved not to dwell on this minor setback, Anthony refocused on his immediate goals. He was ready to venture out once again, his spirits lifted by the new skill and the prospect of further discoveries. Humming a tune, he traversed the cavern ceiling, feeling lighter and more agile with each move. Returning to the pool, he noted that little seemed to have changed in his absence. The beasts below carried on as usual, oblivious to the stealthy ant above who was already planning his next move in the ongoing struggle for survival in this treacherous, underground world. Anthony's gaze fell upon the pool below, now glowing slightly brighter through his enhanced eyesight. Curiosity gnawed at him, particularly about the pool's water, which seemed to draw the cavern's monstrous inhabitants with an irresistible allure. In contrast, despite his own perilous adventures and exertions since arriving in this hostile world, from dodging the crocobeast to crafting a makeshift bed and devouring lizard meat, Anthony hadn't felt the slightest thirst. This was peculiar, considering that he, too, was a creature of this cavern. He pondered why these creatures were drawn to drink from the pool when he felt no such urge. Was there a fundamental difference between him and the other residents, or was there something unique about the water itself? Determined to uncover the truth, Anthony decided it was time to investigate the pool's mysterious waters. Taking careful, measured steps, Anthony descended from the ceiling, mindful of the lurking dangers below, including the repulsive cluster of centipedes. His observations had revealed a commonality among many of the cavern's denizens. They all shared reptilian traits, from the formidable crocobeast to the spiky lizard. Perhaps, he mused, there was a pattern or reason behind this prevalence of reptilian features. Just as he was about to reach the pool, a wolf lizard, previously undetected, surged towards him with predatory speed. However, to Anthony's surprise, the lizard suddenly halted and retreated, its attention diverted by the menacing presence of the towering centipede. Anthony breathed a sigh of relief. His close call with the wolf lizard left him unscathed. But now he faced the intense, crimson gaze of the centipede tribe. Their hissing mass of legs and antennae made them appear like grotesque, mutated insects from a nightmare. Yet, despite their daunting appearance and clear interest in him, the centipedes hesitated. Anthony silently thanked his lucky stars, his hypothesis about the area's unique dynamics seeming increasingly plausible. He had spent days observing the behavior of the pool's frequenters and noted a critical detail. No creature was ever attacked while it drank from the pool. Not once. It appeared as if the pool served as a neutral zone, a place of unspoken truce where even the most ferocious beasts refrained from violence. This observation led Anthony to speculate that the pool's significance extended beyond mere hydration. Anthony's curiosity was a double-edged sword. Despite his trepidation about the burning pool water that all the local monsters seemed drawn to, he couldn't just walk away without trying it himself. With a breath of resolve, he closed his eyes, dipped his face into the water, and took a gulp. The reaction was immediate and intense. The water scorched his tongue as if he had swallowed acid. He leaped back, rolling on the ground in agony. The sensation was unbearable, yet he had to know. Why did these creatures drink this seemingly lethal liquid? Panting from the pain, Anthony wondered if he had stumbled into a cavern of masochistic beasts. The water brought nothing but searing pain, with no apparent benefits or changes to his health. He had expected some transformative magical effect, given the creature's fascination with the pool, but there was nothing. Despite the discomfort, his relentless curiosity pushed him to take another sip, this time even more eagerly, hoping to uncover any hidden effects he might have initially missed. Again, the water burned terribly. He thrashed around, trying to spit out the fiery liquid. It was clear now. The pool water was nothing but torture. Resolving never to torment himself with it again, Anthony turned his attention to exploring other parts of the cavern, eager to utilize his new tunnel sense ability. Navigating through the cave became more manageable with tunnel sense, guiding him towards areas where the light veins in the rock glowed the brightest. As he ventured deeper, a new scent tickled his antennae, hinting at the presence of other, perhaps even stranger creatures lurking within the cavern's depths. His exploration was methodical, driven by a blend of caution and inquisitiveness until he stumbled upon something wholly unexpected: a man-made structure. It was a staircase, unmistakably crafted by intelligent beings, designed to connect different levels of the cavern efficiently. The stairs were intricately carved into the rock itself, with detailed ornamentation on each step, a clear sign of deliberate and skilled handiwork. Who could have built this? Anthony mused aloud, excitement bubbling within him. The answer seemed obvious yet thrilling. Humans. This discovery was a breakthrough. For the first time since his arrival in this strange world, Anthony had found concrete evidence of humanoid inhabitants. The presence of stairs not only confirmed that he wasn't alone in a world of monstrous creatures but also opened up a myriad of possibilities about the types of beings that might inhabit this place. As Anthony descended the meticulously carved stairs, his imagination ran wild with fantasies of mythical beings he might encounter. Perhaps dwarves struggling against a formidable enemy, or the elusive elves renowned for their ethereal grace. Whatever lay ahead, his adventure was proving to be anything but mundane. Pondering the human effort that went into constructing such a staircase in this specific tunnel, Anthony surmised that it must be a major thoroughfare, possibly even leading to the surface. This idea alone spurred him onward, his curiosity now coupled with a rush of excitement about potentially exiting the dark, perilous depths of the cavern. The stairs also provided Anthony with an unexpected utility. They served as a gauge for his own size. By comparing his height to that of the steps, which he assumed were built to accommodate beings of human-like stature, he deduced that he might be smaller than he originally thought, roughly around 1 meter tall. This realization brought a new perspective on the monstrous residents of the pool. What seemed like formidable giants to him could actually appear merely as normal-sized animals to a regular human. This led Anthony to speculate about the relative danger of these creatures. Were they simply tutorial monsters? Easy challenges for someone just starting out in this strange world? The thought was oddly comforting but also unnerving. If these were the easy challenges, what horrors lay beyond in the depths of this world that he hadn't yet seen? Choosing prudence over valor for once, Anthony decided against venturing further down the potentially perilous staircase. Instead, he explored a different level of the cavern, where he noticed increasing signs of human activity. Torches adorned the walls, suggesting regular use and maintenance. The deeper he ventured, the less frequent the pulsating light veins on the walls became. This reduction in ambient light was ideal for a stealthy explorer like himself, but it also heightened his sense of unease. His heart raced, thumping loudly against his chest as he moved stealthily forward. The possibility of encountering another person, a real, flesh-and-blood human from perhaps another world entirely, was both thrilling and terrifying. Anthony's mind buzzed with questions for these hypothetical people. As Anthony ventured deeper into the shadowy cavern, his mind buzzed with possibilities about the people he might encounter. Imagining himself as a pioneer in ant-human relations, he wondered about their appearance, their abilities, and whether they wielded magic. Maybe they belonged to an adventure guild, explorers of dungeons and seekers of the unknown. Anthony even fancied communicating with them through gestures or an expressive dance, a hopeful bridge across species. The narrow tunnel gradually became steeper and tighter until a sudden burst of light momentarily blinded him. Blinking against the brightness, Anthony realized with a jolt of joy that sunlight was streaming down through a hole in the cavern ceiling. For the first time since his transformation, he felt the sun's warm embrace, and he silently apologized to the holy light for ever taking it for granted in his past life. This glimpse of sunlight renewed his hope. The surface, and possibly civilization, was nearer than he had assumed. Energized by this revelation, he hurried forward, his anticipation building with every step towards more signs of human activity. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted when he stumbled upon a wooden door slightly ajar, leading into what appeared to be a guard room, perhaps part of some vast underground dungeon system. The room emitted a curious red light, accompanied by the sound of scrambling footsteps. Peering inside, Anthony saw two humans, a man and a woman, dressed in light armor and equipped with a device that seemed capable of detecting monsters. The woman held the device while the man conjured a magical glow from his hands. To Anthony, witnessing this display of magic was nothing short of miraculous. He silently thanked Gandalf for bringing him to a world where magic was real, and wondered if these humans might share their arcane knowledge with him. Caught up in his awe and excitement, Anthony barely registered the man turning towards him, his arms raised as if preparing to cast a spell. The realization hit him like a cold splash. The red crystal device was likely active, identifying him as a monster. In his fascination, he had completely overlooked the fact that, to these humans, he was just another creature of the dark. Panicked, Anthony tried to communicate, to plead for mercy, but without the ability to speak, his intentions remained locked inside him. As he turned to flee, his foot caught on a loose rock, sending him sprawling toward the cavern floor. Anthony's situation had escalated far beyond what he had imagined when he first set out to explore the cavern. As the mana-infused fireball hurtled towards him, all he could think of was how insignificant and vulnerable he felt in that moment. His legs, sore from the fall and subsequent scramble for safety, barely responded to his desperate commands to move. He felt trapped, immobile as more fireballs followed, each one forcing him into a frantic dance of evasion. He sought refuge behind columns, but even these provided little safety. An arrow, slicing through the air with lethal precision, narrowly missed his abdomen, reminding him of his precarious situation. He needed a distraction, something to shift the human's focus long enough for him to find an escape route. With his heart pounding and mind racing, Anthony tapped into his tunnel sense, weaving through the labyrinthine pathways of the cavern. The paths were many, but one reeked with a foul stench so potent it made his eyes water. The humans were closing in, and in a desperate move, he turned and fired a two-way acid shot at them. It was an act of raw survival, more reflex than reasoned strategy. The acid did little to deter his pursuers. It only intensified their retaliation. Ducking another arrow and evading the relentless barrage of fireballs felt like a nightmarish game where the stakes were his life. Anthony's earlier hopes of peaceful interaction had disintegrated into smoke and adrenaline. Every turn and sprint took him further from his goal of understanding and closer to sheer survival. In a brief moment of respite behind a protruding rock, Anthony chastised himself for his naivety. He had forgotten, even if just for a moment, that he was no longer human. He was a monster in the eyes of those hunting him. His appearance, his very existence, was enough to provoke fear and aggression. As he prepared to continue his escape, he heard the ominous hiss of the centipedes from one tunnel and the approaching footsteps of the humans from another. The lesser of two evils was not clear, but the decision was made for him as the man with the fireballs appeared at the entrance of his temporary hideout. With no time to waste, Anthony sprinted into the darkness, the fireballs lighting up the tunnel behind him as he disappeared. Navigating the narrow, twisting paths with the aid of his tunnel sense, Anthony plotted his next move. His plan was desperate but straightforward. Use the centipede cluster as a diversion to escape the humans. If he could antagonize the centipedes into a frenzy with his acid spray, perhaps he could create enough chaos to slip away unnoticed. His stealth skill would be critical here. If he could remain hidden long enough to provoke the centipedes and then make his escape, there might still be a chance for him to survive this ordeal. Anthony's pulse raced as he prepared for what felt like an impossible escape. With no other options left and his stealth mode deactivated, he made a desperate decision. It was now or never. Turning to face the clump of centipedes, he unleashed a torrent of corrosive acid, hoping to incite chaos among the creatures. His aim was true, dousing each centipede with the burning liquid. While the acid wasn't lethal enough to penetrate their tough exteriors, it achieved its purpose. The centipedes were enraged and immediately set their multitude of legs in motion, chasing after Anthony with furious speed. The ensuing chase was nothing short of a nightmare. Anthony sprinted through the tunnel system, his heart pounding in his ears, regretting his risky strategy as he dodged the snapping jaws of his pursuers. Each moment brought him dangerously close to being overtaken, his body screaming with exhaustion. The light at the end of the tunnel seemed impossibly far away, and Anthony's stamina dwindled with each desperate step. Just when he thought he couldn't go on, salvation appeared in the form of the tunnel exit. Summoning every last reserve of energy, Anthony burst into the open, leaping out just as the human who had been hunting him appeared, poised to deliver a deadly blast. The man, taken aback by the sudden eruption of centipedes following close behind Anthony, was momentarily distracted, giving Anthony the chance to land safely amidst the chaos. Now on the surface, Anthony knew he had to keep moving. The centipedes, though disoriented by the acid and the sudden exposure to light, were still hot on his trail. Anthony curled into a ball, a primitive defense mechanism, muttering pleas for survival under his breath. Miraculously, as if in answer to his prayers, the pursuing centipedes began to explode and disintegrate before reaching him. Confusion reigned until Anthony realized that the humans, initially out to capture him, were now unwittingly aiding his escape by attacking the centipedes. With explosions and confusion all around, Anthony saw his chance. He began to crawl stealthily through the chaos, hoping to slip away unnoticed. His escape was almost perfect until he accidentally bumped into a human leg. Startled, he scrambled back just in time to avoid a deadly spear thrust aimed in his direction. Instead, the spear impaled the remaining centipedes that had been relentlessly pursuing him. Breathing a sigh of relief and gratitude for his incredible luck, Anthony thanked whatever higher powers, or perhaps Gandalf's mysterious influence, that had intervened on his behalf. Amidst the turmoil he'd unleashed, Anthony felt a mix of guilt and urgency as he watched the escalating battle from his hiding spot behind an old doorway. Employing his stealth to remain unseen, he pondered his situation. His actions had set the cavern's dangerous denizens against one another, and now the violence of their confrontation was laid out before him. Meanwhile, far from the chaotic underground, Commander Titus of Lyria labored in his office. Frustration was etched deeply on his face as he dealt with the endless bureaucracy that kept him from the action. The daily grind of paperwork and command was wearing on him, and in a moment of peak irritation, he decided to step out into the cool night for some much-needed air. As Titus walked through the halls of his command center, the respect from his troops was palpable, though he barely acknowledged their salutes. Driven by a need to be more directly involved, he quickly made his way to the briefing room where Tribune Aurelia updated him on the recent disturbances in the dungeon, particularly about a strangely intelligent monster that avoided direct conflict, intriguing Titus enough to decide to take matters into his own hands. Back in the cavern, Anthony, hidden and watching, felt the weight of his decision to pit monster against guard. While it had been a move for survival, the reality of the violence it sparked weighed heavily on him. Despite this, he knew he had to keep moving. As the skirmish between the centipedes and the human guards intensified, Anthony carefully planned his next move, trying to stay clear of both the centipedes' wrath and the guards' relentless attacks. Realizing the need to find a safer route, Anthony scanned his surroundings. His heart raced as he navigated through the chaos, dodging spells and debris. The humans were efficient and ruthless, their spells cutting down the monstrous centipedes with terrifying precision. Anthony, caught in the middle, understood the peril of his situation. Exposure meant death. With stealth still cloaking his presence, he made a careful move towards a more secure area, all the while dodging the magical onslaught. Anthony observed the grim reality of the battlefield where humans wielded their spells against the monstrous inhabitants with ruthless efficiency. It wasn't a fight, but a slaughter. Feeling utterly powerless and knowing he couldn't contribute meaningfully to the conflict, Anthony wished for Gandalf's guidance. Instead, a harsh slap snapped him back to reality, delivered by none other than a human figure identical to his former self, human Anthony. Grateful for the wake-up call, Anthony took a moment to reassess his situation and what he had learned so far. Indeed, the chaos had confirmed several crucial facts. Magic was real and wielded by humans. There was a structured human society in this mysterious world, and the power gap between his current monstrous form and the humans was staggeringly wide. More painfully, he had learned about his vulnerabilities, the hard way. The onslaught had reduced his HP significantly, bringing him dangerously close to what he now understood was his critical threshold. With his HP halved and his body battered, Anthony realized that recovery might not be as straightforward as he hoped. He might need to actively seek ways to heal, a thought that added urgency to his next steps. But amidst the devastation, an opportunity presented itself. The battlefield was littered with the carcasses of fallen beasts, providing an abundant source of biomass.